Every year, millions of people around the world go missing, with some eventually being found, while others remain lost. However, what continues to perplex investigators are the cases of farmers who vanish from their farms. Despite their expertise in navigating bush tracks and familiarity with their land, some farmers disappear under mysterious circumstances, never to be seen again. This video will explore such incidents in detail. Orion Williamson. It was a hot, sunny July afternoon in Selma, Alabama, when Orion Williamson, his wife, and son relaxed on the porch of their farmhouse. The year was 1854, and the family watched horses graze under the sunshine in the distance. After sitting for a while, Orion stood up and ventured toward the grassy field to tell his farm worker to move the horses into a shaded area. He picked up what was described as a stick laying nearby and began to play with it as he walked forward. Farmer Wren and his son James were the neighbors of the Williamson family. They passed by in a buggy when they saw Williamson walk into the field. The Wrens stopped to wave hello, and the impossible happened as Williamson waved back to his neighbors. He suddenly disappeared, vanishing without a trace into thin air. Wren rushed to where Orion Williamson last stood, soon joined by Mrs. Williamson and her child. They scoured the area, hoping to find a lost farmer, but it was grass and land, like Williamson had never been there. What just occurred was impossible to explain. How could a grown man completely vanish before his family and neighbors? With the sudden realization and shock from what had happened to her husband, Mrs. Williamson fainted and was taken to the local hospital. When word of the mysterious occurrence spread throughout town, 300 people gathered and went to the field to look for Williamson. The crowd carefully searched the entire area. Bloodhounds tracked every turn. Hours passed and darkness came. Torches lit, and still no sign of the poor farmer. The next day, more citizens from communities outside of Selma came to participate in the search. Volunteers went as far as digging into the ground where Williamson disappeared, only to find bedrock. The search parties looked for Orion Williamson tirelessly, but they could never find him, dead or alive, so they gave up eventually. The following spring, investigators found a dry patch of grass near Williamson's disappearance. When Mrs. Williamson learned of this, she relayed to them that she and her son kept hearing her husband's voice calling out for help for weeks after he disappeared, but they couldn't find him every time they ran to that spot. She said she kept hearing his voice until it slowed and gradually faded. While the investigation was ongoing, several theories emerged about what could have happened to Williamson. One theory said that he was abducted by aliens, as there had been several reports of UFO activity in the area around the time of his disappearance. Others think he was teleported to another dimension. Some even believe that he didn't disappear, but instead used his knowledge of magic to make himself invisible. Some investigators considered the possibility of him being a victim of a serial killer who was active in the area at the time. This theory is supported by several other people going missing in the area around the same time. Some people believe Williamson simply ran away from the farm, as he was known to be unhappy with his life there. Whatever the case, one thing is for sure. Orion Williamson's mysterious case is one of the most fascinating unsolved disappearances of all time, and his whereabouts still haunt the town of Selma today. Lenny Dirickson. March 14, 1998, began as a typical morning for 39-year-old Leonard Lenny Dirickson. However, that day unexpectedly changed the narrative. Lenny started this Saturday morning as he usually did. He was having breakfast at his dairy farm in Cheyenne, Oklahoma, with his 16-year-old son Jared, when at 9 a.m., a visitor arrived unannounced in what was described as a white Ford pickup truck. Jared watched as his father went outside to speak to the stranger, who, although friendly, also seemed a stranger to his father. The stranger was probably in his mid-40s. He was a Caucasian male, over 6 feet tall and around 210 pounds. with a full reddish beard. He wore a baseball cap with the words "No Fear" across the front and smoked Marlboro Light cigarettes. The only thing left out was that Jared didn't get a perfect look at his face. When Lenny returned, he told Jared the man wanted to look at one of his stud horses. He didn't mention anything unusual about the stranger. Lenny then told his son to stay and get some feed for the cows, while he went with the man to Elk City, Oklahoma, and Mobeetie, Texas, to look at the horses. That was the last time Jared or anyone else saw Leonard, because he never returned home. Nobody really knows what happened to Leonard Dirickson. The police found no evidence of foul play or a struggle, and most importantly, no body. Their only real clue is the stranger who came to his house. But Leonard didn't simply vanish, not immediately after leaving his home. 2 hours after leaving with the stranger, police learned through a waitress that Leonard ate breakfast with another man at a local coffee shop, the Kettle Restaurant in Elk City. Authorities thought this was odd because he had just had breakfast with Jared 2 hours earlier. The man at the diner matched the description Jared had given the police of the stranger who had visited their home that morning. According to the waitress, the man's behavior was nothing suspicious or strange. The two were seen sitting and talking, although it appeared the strange man was doing most of it while Lenny just listened and sipped coffee. The police then checked the barn where Leonard kept his stud horse, but Lenny never went there that day. A further exhaustive investigation turned up no leads as to his whereabouts. Everything was quiet until 6 months after Leonard's disappearance. Then, a man phoned the police, saying Leonard Dirickson was in a bar in Amarillo, Texas. The man described Lenny in detail, but couldn't provide further details about who he was. He said he sat beside Lenny, spoke to him, and then later realized he was the missing man. He never left a name. By the time police arrived at the bar, the caller and the man he claimed to be Lenny Dirickson were gone. The Roger Mills County Sheriff's Department interviewed the bartender the following day. She remembered the caller being at the bar, but couldn't confirm his statements about Leonard being there. During the incident, Joe Hay, the sheriff, believed Leonard was in the bar in Amarillo. During the investigation, the police discovered that Lenny had gone through a divorce before he disappeared. Investigators believed his dairy business and the rapidly dropping milk price were collapsing, and he had some financial difficulties. Could this be the reason he disappeared? Did he just decide to walk away and start anew? But Jared knew his father would never leave him behind like that. According to the teenager, he was always with his dad every day. Every morning, they would go to work, do the chores, and he would go to school. The boy shrugged off the idea of his father abandoning him because of their closeness. But with Lenny nowhere to be found, Jared's claims couldn't be confirmed. Lenny's mother, Norma, also does not believe that he would leave Jared and go off without telling anyone where he was. She believes that they were too close of a family for him to do that. Furthermore, he hadn't cashed his last paycheck or used his credit cards since his disappearance. One aspect of this case has always troubled investigators. Jared didn't know the man, and Lenny didn't act like he did either. But then, how did this stranger know where they lived? Why was he asking about purchasing a horse that wasn't ever up for sale? Was that really what they talked about? Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton, a reclusive but hard-working farmer, found himself thrust into the spotlight of danger when he unwittingly stumbled upon an $8 million marijuana plantation on his remote property back in 1991. His discovery catalyzed a massive drug bust that rattled the foundations of the Italian mafia's grass empires in New South Wales and Queensland. However, the passage of time seemed to dull the memory of Morton's involvement in the drug bust, and life on Strathspey Station returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet fate had other plans in store for Morton as the specter of his past resurfaced with chilling consequences. On August 14, 2014, Morton vanished without a trace. sending shockwaves of concern rippling through the tight-knit community of Hugh Hendon. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain shrouded in mystery, with conflicting reports and speculation swirling in its wake. Morton had been doing his routine on his expansive property, checking cattle fences as he had done countless times before the incident happened. Kathleen, his wife, was vacationing in Germany when she grew concerned after failing to reach her husband. With a sinking feeling in her gut, she alerted their neighbor, initiating a chain of events that would thrust the quiet countryside into a frenzy of search and rescue efforts. As dawn broke on Friday, the neighbor, accompanied by concerned community members, ventured to Morton's house, only to be met with eerie signs of his absence. The sprinklers continued to water the lawn, oblivious to the unfolding drama, while the back gate stood open, inviting speculation and concern. Chickens scratched in the garden, oblivious to the turmoil that had engulfed their owner, and Charlie's leather coat hung silently on its peg, a silent witness to his inexplicable disappearance. With a sinking feeling in their hearts, the neighbors immediately reported Morton missing, setting in motion a frantic search effort that spanned the vast expanse of his 40,000-hectare property. Despite the daunting task of searching such a vast area, search crews remained determined to find the missing cattle grazer, combing bush tracks, fence lines, dry creek beds, and rocky outcrops in a relentless quest for answers. Inspector Roger White, tasked with leading the investigation, acknowledged the challenges facing the search efforts, conceding that finding Morton amidst the sprawling landscape was akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, rescuers persisted, the resolve unwavering even as hopes of a successful outcome began to fade. In their quest for clues, investigators turned their attention to Morton's financial records, searching for any recent activity that could shed light on his whereabouts. While the investigation into his bank accounts yielded no immediate answers, it served as a reminder of the possibilities that lay before them. Meanwhile, Morton's family grappled with the agonizing uncertainty of his disappearance, seeking answers where none seemed to exist. With little to go on, they turned to the coroner, requesting an inquiry into 3 possible scenarios: a mafia hit, suicide, or voluntary disappearance. Each possibility carried its own weight of implications, leaving the family torn between conflicting emotions and unanswered questions. Bruce Benson. The day started like any other for Bruce Benson, a 69-year-old farmer from Randlett, Oklahoma. He accompanied his wife Maxine on a routine grocery shopping trip before she departed for a girls' trip to Missouri. They shared a simple breakfast of pie, and later that evening, Bruce drove to Bill's Catfish in Waurika for dinner, a comforting ritual before Maxine's departure. Before Bruce saw Maxine off, she ensured he had everything he needed before she went on her journey. Maxine left for her trip with a kiss goodbye, leaving Bruce alone to tend to the farm. After bidding farewell to his wife, Bruce returned home to Randlett, about 15 miles from the restaurant, where his son Grady Jr. awaited him in the fields. Arriving at the field, Bruce brought supper from the fish house for his son, a thoughtful gesture that spoke to his caring nature. As they shared a meal amidst the gentle hum of the Oklahoma countryside, Bruce mentioned to his son that he wasn't feeling his best and might take a day off from working in the fields the following day. Grady Jr., understanding his father's need for rest, didn't think much of it, assuming everything was normal. The next day came and went, and Bruce was nowhere to be found on the farm. Grady Jr. shrugged off his father's absence, attributing it to his earlier mention of feeling unwell. That same morning, Maxine texted her husband, as she had done the night before, but never received a response. At first, Maxine didn't worry because she knew Bruce wouldn't text back. After all, he just had a flip phone, and that's all he wanted. It wasn't until midnight that she felt something was off. He didn't text back, which is normal, but he didn't call back. Something was wrong. Then she called their son, Grady. The couple's only child, Grady, wasted no time springing into action. When Grady entered the house, he saw a new pair of boots his father had bought next to the chair he always sat in, with a pair of socks on top of them. But Bruce Benson was nowhere to be found. Grady told his mother he would come back to check again after lunch. But after lunch, he didn't find his father either. At that moment, it became evident that something was wrong. Maxine and the others on the trip started trying to get home. They rented a car and came home that evening around midnight. When Maxine returned, she noticed the pie hadn't been touched since they ate it together. Grady reported his father missing that same day, and authorities immediately jumped into action. As the hours turned into days, the search for Bruce intensified, with authorities launching a massive operation to scour the surrounding countryside for any sign of the missing farmer. Bruce's phone, wallet, and keys were found inside his pickup truck, offering tantalizing clues, but no definitive answers. Despite the exhaustive efforts of law enforcement agencies, Bruce remained elusive, his whereabouts shrouded in mystery. Drones, airplanes, helicopters, and dog teams were deployed to search neighboring counties. Yet each lead yielded little more than frustration and despair. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Bruce's absence cast a long shadow over the Benson family, leaving them grappling with unanswered questions and haunting uncertainties. Yet amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope remained, a glimmer of possibility that Bruce would return home safe and sound one day, bringing with him the closure and relief they so desperately sought. Albert Burkett. On New Year's Day of 2019, 69-year-old Albert Burkett drove to a family gathering with his sister, Mabel Taylor, in Carlisle in his black hire car. He spent the day surrounded by loved ones before departing around 5:30 p.m. Little did anyone know it would be his last family trip. A single man passionate about farming, hunting, and his part-time job at H&H in Carlisle, Burkett's life was one of simplicity and routine. Despite living alone, he eschewed modern amenities like television in favor of books, relishing in the quiet solitude of his rural surroundings. Known for his sharp intellect and engaging conversation, Burkett was a wealth of knowledge on a variety of subjects, a fact that endeared him to those who knew him best. Yet, despite his outward resilience, Burkett was no stranger to adversity. He was battling high blood pressure and enduring a debilitating back injury in 2015 after falling from a tree while trimming. The injury was so bad that he had metal rods inserted to repair the damage. He faced each challenge with characteristic resilience and determination, and when a heart attack threatened to derail his life in September 2018, he bounced back with remarkable speed, returning to work just 6 weeks later after undergoing a successful procedure to insert stents. But nothing had prepared him or his loved ones for the inexplicable events that would unfold on that fateful day in January. After returning from the family gathering, a neighbor spotted Burkett going to his milking parlor, a routine task that spoke to the rhythm of his daily life. Later that evening, another villager, Hannah Carruthers, encountered Burkett searching for his dog between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. When Hannah heard the unmistakable bark of Burkett's dog, she ventured outside to investigate and found the faithful companion waiting on her doorstep, a familiar sight for a dog known to wander. Securing a lead around its neck, Hannah set off through the village, going to Burkett's farm to reunite the lost pup with its owner. Their chance encounter on that fateful night seemed harmless, a brief exchange between neighbors bound by shared familiarity and mutual respect. Ever the embodiment of calm and composure, Burkett spoke of mundane tasks awaiting him at home, oblivious to the dark shadow lurking just beyond the horizon. The following morning, neighbors got concerned when Burkett's curtain was still drawn and there was no sign of his dog outside. When his door was unlocked forcefully after several efforts without response, he wasn't inside, and one of his guns, a .22 rifle, was missing. Richard Morton, a close friend and hunting companion, recalled fond memories of their shared passion for the outdoors. Each hunting trip a testament to Burkett's expertise and precision. Yet as Morton reflected on their recent hunting excursions, a troubling realization began to take shape. While Burkett had spoken of tracking a fox in the days leading up to his disappearance, the missing rifle, an essential tool for such a task, seemed inconsistent with his usual meticulous planning. Burkett, known for his careful selection of weaponry tailored to each hunting expedition, would not have chosen a .22 rifle for such a purpose, casting doubt on the validity of the hunting theory. Despite exhaustive search efforts, which included the deployment of helicopters, police dogs, drones, and an underwater search team, Burkett remained elusive, his whereabouts shrouded in uncertainty. As weeks turned into months, the hope of his safe return began to dim, leaving loved ones and authorities alike grappling with the chilling reality of his disappearance. Raymond Uden, another neighbor and friend, remembered Burkett's kindness and generosity. He recalled how Burkett had offered to help him track a troublesome fox before he disappeared, showing their shared bond over common interests. Detective Inspector Hodgson, who was in charge of the investigation, said Mr. Burkett's mobile phone had been left in the house, and there was nothing of significant interest when checked, nor had anything been taken out of his bank accounts. The officer later suggested that Burkett went out with his gun to do some hunting, and then he suffered a medical episode and died while concealed, possibly falling into a hole. But is there any evidence for this theory? The pensioner's sister, Mabel, also said Mr. Burkett was a countryman who loved the outdoors and shooting. Even when he visited on New Year's Day, he was cheery, doing crosswords and enjoying the TV. At its height, the search for Mr. Burkett involved more than 100 people, including members of the Cumberland Farmers Foxhounds. Despite extensive police searches and inquiries, he has never been located, and the only thing they can do is presume he has died.